Okay, I'd like to call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's March 15th, 2018, and we're in the Aldermatic Chamber, and it's 7:01. Okay, would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alderman at Large Laurie Wilshire. Here. Alderman at Large Brian McCarthy.
Present.
Alderman at Large Michael O'Brien is present. Alderman at Large David Tenza. Here. Is present. Alderman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
Here.
Present. Alderman Jan Smith.
Present.
And the chair, Chairman Dowd.
Present.
We have 100%.
Excellent. And we also have an extra member.
Oh, geez, my excuse. We have Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Okay, tonight we start the budget review process, which will be going on for a couple of months or so. Tonight we're going to be doing the Aeronautical Fund and the Library and Edgewood, Woodlawn, and Pinewood cemeteries. But before we do that, I'd like to, if there's no objections, to move R 18014 up so that we can release the city treasurer. Where'd he go? There he is. So would you make a motion?
Yes, and that's 014.
18014.
Okay. 18014, relative to transfer up to $50,000 from Department 194 contingency, account 70150 contingency, negotiations into various salaries and wage accounts. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, the motion is to have final passage of R 18014. Mr. Fredette, would you like to come up and join us in case there's a question? We just want to get you on TV. Okay, so the motion's on the floor. Are there any questions? Guess not. All right. Since there were no questions or discussion, the motion on the floor is to recommend to the full board final passage of R 18014. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You can go home now. Okay, as we get into the budget review process, we're going to be going through, and we're doing it a little bit differently this year. We're going to be going through all the divisions, one, for the most part, a night. The smaller ones we sort of combine because we don't have that many nights, too. So, and everybody got a copy of the memo that I put out on the budget process and the way it works and how to understand the budget book? No questions? And also, there was another, I want to make sure everybody get their copy of the capital improvements, which is also part of this. Okay, and we'll have a special night on that. Okay, as we move forward, are there any questions about the process? Nope. Okay, so the first,
Do I go into public comment?
public comment on here. Oh, there is a public comment. Anyone would like to speak in public comment before we get started? Nope. All right, back to the order.
Okay, communications.
Communications?
Yes. Mr. Chair, we have a communication from Edgewood Cemetery Board of Trustees. Reason summary services provided at Edgewood and suburban cemeteries. There being no objection, Chairman Dowd, would you accept the communications and place it on file?
Yes,
Very good. Also, Mr. Chair, we have from Woodlawn Cemetery Board of Trustees, a summary of services provided at Woodlawn and Pinewood Cemeteries, and being no objections from the chair, would you accept and place on file?
No objections.
Okay. Being no objections, Chairman Challis says, oh, you want to suspend the rules? Yes,
I did.
that's very good.
Okay, the first group that's going to be speaking tonight will be the Aeronautical Fund. So would anyone that's going to speak to that, please come up, join us in the circle. And as per the guidance I put out, if you would give us an overview of the airport and then talk to us about after that, talk to us about your budget. So
Thank you.
all right, the airport budget can be found on page 327. But before we get into the numbers, could you please introduce yourself and give us a little background on the airport?
My name is Michael Rosenblum, and I am Chair of the Nashua Airport Authority. I've been Chair for a little over 2 years, and I've been on the board of the authority for over 12 years. With me is our Airport Manager, Chris Lynch, who was a new addition during this past year, and a welcome addition. The airport is running extremely smoothly. We are one of 25 public airports in New Hampshire, and the Department of Transportation for the state came out with a system plan 3 years ago where they evaluated all airports, and we are and they list the various airports as whether they are general airports, local airports, regional, or a national airport. And Nashua is the only nationally considered airport by the Department of Transportation, which gives us some leverage on what services can be supplied from the state to us. We have a state-of-the-art precision approaches. We have 3 of them. We can have aircraft land with a ceiling of 200 feet, and we also have 2 non-precision approaches. There are about 234 aircraft that are based at Nashua, and we have just finished our phase 2 of the paving project, where we paved a good portion of the south end of the taxiways. We are also in the process of updating our master plan, which has not been done for over 10 years. And we are looking at reviving additional paving projects because some of the other pavement is over 40 years old and has reached its useful life. The tenants pay over $700,000 in property taxes, and they are very appreciative over the paving project that we took place. Currently on the books for the warm weather when it comes is a project to groove and seal the runway that will allow jet aircraft to land when the weather is inclement and the pavement is a little slick. And that's a big help for the corporate aircraft that's based in Nashua. We have a very hard-working, dedicated staff, especially in inclement weather. We have gotten letters from tenants who have very much appreciated the service, the personalized service to keep the airport open and keep it safe for all individuals. The projects, the major capital projects that we have, the FAA pays for about 90% of the project cost. 5% comes from the state, and 5% is a local match. And in the past, the city has been very generous in sharing some of that local cost with us. We do have some projects that are coming up, and Chris will talk a little bit more about it. But also want to mention that the Nashua Airport generates over $46 million in revenue and sales to the area, and it employs over 350 jobs. Chris.
My name's Chris Lynch. I'm the airport manager. I'm also a commercial pilot, rated in fixed-wing aircraft as well as rotorcraft. I've been flying since 1992, so I have a passion for aviation, and that's why I came to the Nashua Airport to manage it. I actually did most of my flight training back in the 90s at Nashua. The packages that I handed you this evening, page one's just an overview. For those of you who are not familiar with our airport, tells you a little bit about it. And also included in the package are the figures that we submitted to the Capital Improvement Committee, which shows our capital improvement plan for the next 6 years. And there's also some notes from a meeting I recently had with Mayor Donchis, Chief of Staff Kim Kleiner, and CFO John Griffin, where we discussed the budget and some of the needs for the airport. And there's a few other items in here that I pulled out from the city budget, talking about capital equipment reserve fund, and a little page about the upcoming paving projects in the city. And finally, there's a letter on the back page that I had written to the Department of Public Works Director, Ms. Foto, and Mr. Patrician. And it's nothing that we have to read tonight, but I just wanted you all to be aware of these things that, you know, are going on with the airport. Our upcoming project this year is we're purchasing a piece of snow removal equipment, which is a grader. And the estimated cost of the grader is approximately $350,000. This project's been approved by the FAA and the New Hampshire DOT Bureau of Aeronautics. And actually, the bid opening will be next week on the 26th. I understand that several people have put bids in already. So the estimated cost is approximately $350,000, of which the FAA share is $315,000, and the State of New Hampshire DOT, their 5% share, is $17,500, which leaves a airport sponsor city share of 5%, another $17,500. So we respectfully request that the city participates in this and can hopefully grant us that portion of this, this project. And we basically do one project a year at the airport, and there's a lot of reasons. You can't get all the funding from the FAA to get everything done in 1 year, and obviously we couldn't do it without the FAA or the help of the city. Operationally, we hold our heads above water at the Nashua Airport. We only have 4 employees, and it's pretty much a break even with what we take in for income at the airport. But when it comes to the capital projects, we rely, as all airports do, heavily upon the federal government as well as the state government and the local government. And you can see a lot of these figures in some of these things that I've written up here. So in addition to that, the only other thing that I'd like to mention to the committee, and I brought this up at a recent meeting with the mayor, is we have a need for a piece of equipment that we can't get funding from the federal government for, and it's a tractor. They'll only provide money for snow removal equipment, not lawn mowing equipment. We maintain a 325-acre parcel that's actually, the airport's owned by the city, and we manage it. And we just can't, we don't have the funding to acquire this tractor. We're running a tractor that's, I think it's from the early 70s, and it mows at about 2 miles per hour, takes 2.5 weeks to mow the grass, and by that time, you're already a week behind the 8 ball. So I'm asking that we be included in the Capital Equipment Reserve Fund, hopefully in the upcoming future, so that we can acquire this piece of equipment that's necessary to maintain the property. An estimate on this was approximately $135,000. And I think I had written that in here somewhere. And the other thing that I had brought up to the mayor was Perimeter Road at the airport. Now, we service, like Chairman Rosenblum said, we service about 250 aircraft in total. We have a lot of corporate jets in there, a lot of corporate traffic in and out of there, and Perimeter Road is falling apart. If you drive down it, you're lucky if you don't lose your wheels. And I understand that the city's had a lot of problems this winter with roads, potholes everywhere, that there's a lot of problems. I do understand that. But this road was basically donated to the city of Nashua from the federal government many years ago to help with the airport infrastructure. They will only do that once, and we don't have the funds to repave the road. We don't have the manpower, the equipment, et cetera. And once again, it is a city-owned street, and so as part of my request, we asked that that be put on the list for paving projects in the upcoming future for the city of Nashua. I had a meeting with Andy Patrician and Lisa Foto from the Department of Public Works last summer when I first came on board. We had a lot of infrastructure issues at the airport that hadn't been dealt with for many years. And actually, Lisa told me that she hadn't even talked to anybody for the airport in the last 5 years. And there was a lot of stuff that was just let go. And when I came in, we had a paving project going on that was being funded by the federal government, and we had a sinkhole pop up. And it turned into almost like $100,000 project that the federal government, because they're in the middle of this project, they picked up the tab for that. But the whole time they let us know that this storm drain system that failed was part of the city's infrastructure. But because they were in the middle of the project, they took care of it. That was great. I don't know how I pulled that one off, but I did. But we were told that in the future, all the infrastructure at the airport with the storm drains, the sewers, et cetera, we would need help from the city. And when I discussed this with Director Foto, she agreed and stated that she knows that we don't have a budget. We don't receive a budget from the city. We operate on our own. But for things like infrastructure and capital improvements, like I said, we need the help from the city, the state, the federal government. And Lisa's suggestion was that either we get some type of a budget to handle these problems, or the DPW could get an enhanced budget to help us out when we have these problems. And I thought that it was a better idea that the DPW would get the enhanced budget. The main reason being is I couldn't tell you I need $800,000 or $1 million. I don't need that kind of money. Generally, they're smaller projects. The things that they did for us is they came in with the VACCON truck. They sucked out our drains. They jetted the drains. Our field was full of water. It took 3 weeks after they jetted it to get all the water out of the field. That's how much was trapped on the airfield. So things like that. What did it take? A couple hours of a VACCON truck coming in. We had another sinkhole. They came in. They repaired it in a day. They dug it up. They found the break in the pipe. They fixed it. They filled it in. They were out of there. Storm drain, covers, things like that. There's really nothing elaborate that goes on in there. So again, I'm not asking for any budget from the city, but if the DPW can help us out, which she's agreed that she will, she said we might need to pick up a little extra funding to do these little things. So just making everybody aware of it. I guess that's our 15 minutes. I don't want to waste anybody else's time. Do you have any questions for us?
Questions? Yes, Alderman Tenza?
Thank you.
So some of us are new here on the committee, so I'm going to have just general questions for you, if you don't mind, about the airport funding. And I guess my first question is, the airport is basically financially sufficient on its own now, except for the capital projects you talked about. Is there a way that the city could be better utilizing the airport, better funding the airport so that it is more efficient, or turning a profit for the city, or is that not really what the design of the airport is for?
Take this one. The city, the only help that we need, like you said, is the capital improvements, things like that. Can we make it more profitable? When we lease land, for instance, because we accept federal money, we have to abide by grant assurances. And one of those grant assurances, specifically stated by the FAA, is to provide affordable property for airport tenants. And so the tenants pay property taxes and they pay a land lease. I really can't increase these land leases thinking that I can make more money there, because it specifically states that because of the grant assurance, because of the federal funding that we receive, we can't be raising the rents. So our hands are tied right there. Yet there's other ways that we make money. We take income in from fuel flowage. Well, the numbers are down quite a bit from where they were in, say, '08. They're about a third of what they were, because aviation's kind of cyclical. We have a plan on the boards where we're trying to generate more corporate traffic into the Nashua Airport, into the state of New Hampshire and the National Airspace System. There's a House bill that's been going on up in Concord that would reduce the registration fees. Currently, they have a millage fee, and let's say, for instance, you have a $30 million jet, well, you're gonna pay $300,000 a year to register that jet in New Hampshire. That same jet in Massachusetts, you would pay $300. Well, nobody's flocking to New Hampshire to register their jets and base their jets here. So this House bill would repeal that, and it's already passed the House, the Senate, and now they're bringing it together to come up with a final version of it. And on a side note, sadly enough, people, leaving the state of New Hampshire to go to Massachusetts over taxes was absurd. Well, with this new bill, we're anticipating some growth in corporate aviation in New Hampshire, especially Nashua, because we compete with, say, Hanscom, Bedford down in Massachusetts. They have 21 Gulfstreams based there, and I believe over 40 corporate jet aircraft there. We don't think that we're going to take those aircraft from there, but we think that people that are buying new jets, up-and-coming companies that are based in New Hampshire, they're going to want to base their aircraft at Nashua. As those planes get based here, a single cabin class aircraft would boost fuel sales by 40%, and so on and so on. So this is how we plan on growing the business, bringing the corporate traffic into Nashua. We have a lot of corporate traffic, so we need the fuel flow. We get landing fees. There's overnight parking. There's service that needs to be done. It creates jobs. And then that money flows throughout the community and makes it a success for the whole community.
We also are working very closely with the Chamber of Commerce to try to attract business and business jets into the area. And we do have a marketing campaign that we have talked about, and we continue to try to expand that.
One other thing. One of the foundations of aviation is education. And most recently, I'm sure everybody's seen this in the paper or knows of it personally, Southern New Hampshire University came in and they bought an assumption of lease on 79 Perimeter Road, which was the old Daniel Webster Aviation Center. With them coming to town as a collegiate flight program, it's popping up other flight training centers as well. Hopefully we become the flight training mecca that we were back in the 90s once again, and that'll bring a lot of income into the city, into the airport, into the state, and that has a long-term effect on the airport. I'm an example of that. I started there in '92. I own 2 aircraft, own a hangar, spend a lot of money at the Nashua Airport.
And so is there, just a brief follow-up to this question, I mean, is there anything that the city could be doing to help you with those efforts to either attract more corporate leases to come to Nashua, or to attract, I mean, especially the flight school and training, I think it is particularly important for the city because typically people who are coming in to learn to fly are maybe younger and have families and, you know.
We are working with the folks in the city, with Tim Cummings
Okay.
and other individuals in the city as a coordinated effort to try to build the attraction to bring people in.
I had a meeting the other day with Tim Cummings, and there's a company that I've been courting for over a month now. The company's called Terrafugia. If anybody's familiar with it, it's a car plane, as crazy as that sounds. They have an automobile, the wings pop out and it flies. Well, this sounds like the Jetsons, and it really is. And I can tell you that this is a real big deal. Terrafugia was developed by 4 MIT students back in the early 2000s. It was just acquired by a company named Geely, which is a Chinese firm that is the parent company of Volvo and Lotus. They are looking to come to Nashua to base their operation here for manufacturing, assembly, and distribution of these aircraft. And I had Tim Cummings involved in this meeting the other day, and this would put Nashua on the map. I can tell you that when they broke the news that Geely picked them up, this was worldwide news. They have over $25 million in deposits for aircraft right now, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. They're looking into autonomous vehicles for the future. So I had Tim involved in this, and we're really trying to bring them to Nashua. So in terms of the city helping, Tim hopefully would be a great help. He came in, offered some tax incentives to this firm, and we haven't inked the deal yet, but I can tell you they're on the phone with me every day, and I think it's looking pretty good.
If I could ask, because each time you speak, you re-identify yourself, because the person transcribing is not gonna know who you
Okay.
are. And I will recognize the alderman by name so that she knows who's speaking. Alderman Tenza, you still?
Just one final question.
Okay.
And that's about the money, the surf money for the new mower, because you talked a little bit about DPW potentially teaming up or expanding their budget. Would it be reasonable or feasible for, rather than the purchase of a new mower, shifting the mowing to DPW? And I don't want, they're not, obviously not here, I don't want to speak for them, but is that something that potentially could happen?
Chris Lynch, Airport Manager. I've had this discussion with the Director of Parks and Recreation, and they don't have the equipment or the manpower in that department. And it was his suggestion that I get involved with the surf program. And if you look in some of these pages that I put in the back of the package, you can see which departments are involved in the surf program. And you can, yes, good thing I have my glasses on, this is small type. In total, current replacement cost for everything that the city is looking at is $5,705,000. And respectively, if you look into the departments and we go into Public Works, they have a request for $2,800,000 worth of equipment. I'm asking for one piece of equipment. This isn't an ongoing thing. We keep our equipment for a long time. If you come down, I have an antique barn of equipment in there. We do really good maintenance down there. We make things last. And so I'm asking for one piece of equipment that's approximately $135,000. And I have one man on the staff that does all of the mowing. And if he were to get this piece of equipment, we actually acquired a 20-foot batwing mower free from the Manchester Airport in the fall. And he said, all you need to do is get the tractor to run it, and you'll be able to cut that grass in about 6 days.
Just so you know, when the Park Rec comes in, they will tell you that they can hardly keep up with what they're mowing themselves. And as far as surf, we will have an evening where they talk to surf and what's been recommended by the mayor for coverage in that area. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lynch, I would like you to talk a little bit about about Perimeter Road. I did have the opportunity to work up there on that particular fire station. And at the end of Perimeter Road, you're familiar with the emergency access gate, and then you're into the outback in a way, for no better term. It's not paved or anything else like that. And you did request that the city go look at the end of Perimeter Road and to upgrade that. And then I got to thinking on that. Is that worth the airport authority looking into some form of granting from the FAA or the feds or something like that as far as emergency access? Because as you know, part of that is for a short landing or something. I've had an accident when somebody came down in the swamp out there. It would be nice to have it totally accessible for emergency apparatus. So it's just, I don't know if it's on the horizon or not, you know.
Chris Lynch, Airport Manager. I've only had discussions with the Department of Transportation's Bureau of Aeronautics about the actual paved part of Perimeter Road. And that's when they told me that the federal government will only pay for that once. I have not talked to them about paving anything out in the North 40, as we refer to it. We do maintain those roads with trimming the trees, keeping the brush cut back. We plow that road. We run a grader out there twice a year. And that's what we do to take care of that road. In terms of paving the whole thing, right now I can tell you that Pennachuck is in the process of tying a line in from Deerwood Drive up to, is it Northwood Drive on the other far end of that?
Yes.
Yeah. They're looking to tie a line there and coming down our existing paved road that runs along basically the railroad tracks. And part of what they're doing there is, I asked them, I said, if you want to come in here, I'd like to see if you're gonna run a line to have at least one fire hydrant out there in case we have a crash or any type of a forest fire or anything like that. Because I know in the past that you have to go in there with tank vehicles only. There is not enough water access, and even in the small ponds out there. So I've asked them to do that, and anything they disturb on that road, they'll be repaving. But in terms of actually Deerwood Drive, there's no plan to pave that, to answer your question.
And from what I remember, the lack of water is critical on the airport. Most of the hydrant access comes from Perimeter Road. There's, of course, there are obstructions to navigation for the craft to put a hydrant out on the end of next to the airport. But the area referred to, I do remember, I think it's the North Fork of Blood's Crossing, believe it or not, you know. It used to be on the map, but, you know, it is the hinterlands out there for sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Yes, Alderman Kelly?
I just wanted to ask about Perimeter Road as well. You had talked about it being federal and then it got donated. Can you just talk a little bit about that history and who actually maintains it now?
Okay, to the best of my knowledge, and it's probably fifth-hand information, but I was told that that road was put in with FAA funds. And so there was matching airport funds, matching DOT funds. And I believe at the time that they paid 95% of that road. But they've told us they only do that once, and they did that as part of an airport project. Who maintains the road? It is a city street, and the city maintains it. They plow it, they come out, they repair the potholes on it for us. And I'll say that, like I said, I understand that the city's been overwhelmed with pothole repairs this winter, and some far worse than what I've seen there. I understand there was some sinkholes in town. Generally, I call them, and they're pretty quick to respond and come out and patch those holes. You know, we bring a lot of people into the airport. There's a lot of people that own corporate jets that belong there, and sometimes I think they're a little disturbed at the condition of the road with the amount of money that they spend there in property taxes. Like Chairman Rosenblum said, the tenants of the airport paid $717,000 in property taxes to the city last year. And, you know, we've had discussions with these different groups at the airport, and their biggest complaint is the condition of Perimeter Road. They feel they spend a lot of money and that they deserve a good road to come in and out.
So if I could clarify
Follow up, Alderman Kelly?
sorry. So if I could clarify, the enhanced budget would be to repave and also do some water access, is that correct?
The, Chris Lynch, Airport Manager, the enhanced budget would be to facilitate the pothole repairs, storm drain repairs, sewer repairs, so all infrastructure. The paving that I'm talking about is the city has a budget for paving, and I made mention of that in here as well. So I believe the funding would come from that. I don't believe that would be part of the enhanced budget that I was speaking of for the Department of Public Works. That question could probably best be answered by Director Photo.
Okay.
I think I can add a little light to that road. I was the chairman of the airport authority when that road went in. And that road has several catch basins and other things in case a fuel truck flipped over. The old road by the college, if something had gone over, would gone right into the water that flows through there. So we were doing fuel farms and other buildings on the airport, and the road connected to those. So the federal government paved that because of the safety concern with fuel trucks and the Environmental Pollution Agency and everything. So it was federally funded with 5% state and 5% local. But going forward, as was mentioned, it's a city street.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So Sanu has bought that building, and I assume they have some kind of a schedule for opening up a flight school. Do we have any idea when that might happen?
Had preliminary meetings with them. They're planning to open up their first phase of a flight school this summer, and to expand it each year over the next 5 years. We are in negotiations with them to extend the lease that they currently have, which expires in 2.5 years.
Okay, recently you closed the fuel farm out there, so you only have one fuel farm right now, tanks. If you get this flight training school and the state is successful in getting more corporate aircraft located here, do you envision at any time having to increase the size of your fuel storage capability?
Chris Lynch, Airport Manager. At this time, no. The fuel farm that was eliminated most recently was on private property. Familiar with SSI, Scientific Solutions? They had their own farm there. They removed that. That hadn't been used in years. Currently, the fuel farm that we have, we feel is adequate even if we tripled our growth. And I had this discussion with the owner of Infinity Aviation, and we talked about that. And they can get fuel deliveries at will.
There was one other fixed base operator or hangar out there with commercial aircraft in it that had its own fuel tank. Is that still in existence?
No, that was the Scientific Solutions, unless there was
So
something prior
This
to
was
that.
another one, smaller tanks. Back in the day when we only had one corporate jet and one corporate hangar. No, so I guess it's not. Alderman
I
McCarthy.
think that was IPBM, and
Yeah.
I think that fuel farm came out ages ago.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, Chris Lynch, Airport Manager. There was on the end of Hangar 7, I believe, the old Tamposi hangar, the blue hangar. You're correct, they had a fuel farm on that. I don't know when that was removed,
Has,
but it was ages ago.
Alderman McCarthy.
so has Mac Air's fuel farm gone? I mean, are the tanks gone?
Right now, Chris Lynch, Airport Manager, the fuel farm is owned by the Nashua Airport Authority. Infinity leases the fuel farm from us, and they pay us flowage fees, as well as a lease fee to use the fuel farm. Mac Air, Nashua Jet, no longer has an FBO. They're simply renting hangars and real estate.
Did they have a separate, did they have a buried fuel farm other than the one that SSI had?
I don't know the answer to that. It was before
I'm
my
just wondering
time.
if we still have any buried tanks that are gonna
We,
have to
we
come
had
out.
a buried fuel farm. I don't, know. I think this one just replaced it. The above-ground tanks are there. I can't, I don't know the details of it.
Okay, but the SSI one was the one that we were scheduled to remove under federal mandate?
Correct.
Okay, and that's gone?
And that's complete. They put in some test wells back in the fall to monitor. There was some trace evidence of contamination in there, and they put the wells in to monitor that, and I believe the case has been closed.
Any other questions? So you had talked about something getting added to SURF and some other expenditures. I'm assuming you're talking about things that the mayor did not put in the budget, because we have in this book a SURF recommendation from the mayor. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that that tractor's not in it.
If you, I'm sorry, Chris Lynch, Airport Manager. I have not seen that. It came through my email this afternoon, and I didn't have time to read it. If there is a SURF recommendation for the Airport Authority, it would be for that tractor, because that's the only thing that I requested.
But when you met with the mayor, did he give you any indication whether he was going to approve that or not?
None whatsoever. He heard what I had to say, and I asked if there were any questions, and there were no questions.
And also, you had talked about another expenditure, which was wasn't in that, trying to think, was in the budget.
It's the grader.
The greater,
snow
oh,
removal
right,
equipment.
the city share of that.
Correct, the 17,500.
Do you know whether the mayor put that in the budget?
I believe that is in there.
Okay. All right.
I haven't seen it. It came across my desk today. Actually, I glanced at it, and I believe that was the only thing that I saw was that 17.5 in there.
Okay.
Probably, oh, I don't have my
Yeah.
phone.
We're all just getting the budget last night and trying to wade through the book. If there are no other questions, Alderman O'Brien.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for housekeeping, I would like to keep this as my personal copy, but I do have to put one in with the record. Do you have an extra copy that I
Yes, sir, I
can keep
do.
with the, to place on file, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your time. Okay,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Thank you for coming in this evening and
Thank you.
also, I was remiss, and before we get started with the airport, can I have a motion to recommend final passage of R 18019? And let me explain that we will put that on the floor at the end of this meeting. We will table it to the next meeting, and we'll keep bringing it up until we finally make a recommendation one way or the other to the full board. So, Alderman O'Brien, would you make a motion for final passage of R 18019? That's the budget. It's not on there.
It's not on there. I would like to,
It's in the
without the
separate-
cue card, I'm gonna wing it, sir. I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage of R 18009.
Thank you. Okay, now, as we go through the budget sessions, we'll be discussing it. At the end of the budget meeting, we'll put it back on the table, and we'll keep bringing it up so that we can have formal discussion about R 18019, which is the budget going forward. Okay, so the next group is the Edgewood Suburban Cemeteries.
People are dying to get in there.
Okay, would you identify yourselves and then, again, because of the number of new people on the Board of Aldermen and the Budget Committee, just give us an overview of the services that you provide in the cemetery area, and then we'll move forward into your request through the mayor and if there were any concerns or things you want to talk about.
Thank you, sir. My name is Tom Maffey. I am the chair of the Edgewood Cemetery Board of Trustees. To my, excuse me, to my left is Superintendent Jeff Snow. On February 22nd, we met with the mayor, CFO Griffith, City Treasurer Dave Fedette, Janet Graziano, and Kim
Kleiner.
Kleiner. Thank you. Thank you. The mayor and CFO asked us a few questions about our operations of the Edgewood and the suburban cemeteries. Wanted to know how much time we had left up at Edgewood and at Evergreen. Jeff answered those questions for us. He told us to keep our place up nice and pretty for the city this summer, as usual. And wanted to know what we performed at our cemeteries. I believe Jeff told him we do approximately, 125 a year, Jeff, burials a year?
Yeah, something like that, maybe 120-ish, varies, anywhere between maybe 100 to 130.
Thank you. We maintain 5 cemeteries in the city. We maintain the Edgewood, Evergreen. Which one's Jeff?
Old South,
Old
Hillside.
South was on Daniel Webster Highway.
Hillside.
Hillside is on Amherst Street, and Gilson Road Cemetery. 3 of those cemeteries, there's no longer any burials allowed in them. I say allowed, I think they were filled up. And to my knowledge, we spend about a week at each cemetery in the fall cleaning up of the 3 cemeteries. And full-time at Edgewood and full-time at Evergreen. And I'll turn it over to Jeff now with these questions. Thank you.
I'm Jeffrey Snow. Well, as Tom said, if you have any questions, I think the little summary there, I think pretty much wraps it up. I don't know if there's any further details you need or want to know about what goes on in the cemetery. The largest amount of time is probably spent on grounds maintenance. Cemetery is over 30 acres, Evergreen. Off the top of my head, I might have put it on that. I think it's about 5 acres, and the others are much smaller. Obviously, making burials and taking care of that aspect is the most important, although not the most time-consuming out of all the goings-on at the cemetery.
So the question I have is, did the mayor change any of your requests?
No.
Tom Maffey. No, we did not, sir. He said our budget came in at what he wanted. Treasurer Fedette was great. It was good with our figures we gave him or presented. And CFO Griffin said we were in good shape.
Just for the board members, their expenditures are pretty constant from year to year. They have revenues, which I may ask you to speak to in a minute, that cover some of their costs, and the rest is, I would say, basically cost of living increases in certain line items, but there's not a lot of expenditure in the. So could you cover how your revenues are this year?
Jeffrey Snow. Well, you can see this money that we bring in, through burials. Sale of lots is not on here. That's a separate item. But installing markers, we put foundations in for monuments, those things. The board has been working on trying to increase revenue from the trust funds, which is something that Dave Fredette has been, I think, coaxing us along at, or the board along at. And so they had met with a representative from TD Wealth, where trust funds are currently held. about trying to increase some of the revenue from the trusts, and they have some other managers they have spoken with and plan to proceed further with and see what they have to offer for maybe increasing the trust revenues.
Okay. Questions? No questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Woodlawn. Have a good night, guys. Take care. Could you introduce yourselves and give us a little overview?
Good evening. My name's Len Fournier. I am the superintendent of Woodlawn and Pinewood Cemeteries.
And I'm Niles Jensen, the chairman of both Woodlawn and Pinewood Cemeteries.
I'll review my bulleted notes, and if you have any questions, we can do them at the end. But Woodlawn Cemetery, our actual address is 101 Kinsley Street. We're a large cemetery in between Kinsley Street and West Hall Street. We're approximately 40 acres. We were incorporated in 1895. We have been self-funded since 1995. We perform approximately 90 interments a year. We have 3 working greenhouses to provide flowers for the grounds. This particular time of year, we're in the process of growing over 13,000 plants. We plant over 480 flower bond beds each spring, which are done before Memorial Day. And we have 14 formal flower beds on the grounds. We also have a mausoleum, provides interior and exterior niches and crypts. It is also environmentally controlled, so it's a comfortable environment either summer or winter all year long. Pinewood Cemetery is located on at 90 Pine Hill Road here in Nashua. It's approximately 6 acres. It was founded in 1928 as the Lithuanian Cooperative Cemetery. It was acquired by the City of Nashua in 2010, and we presently do approximately 4 interments a year there. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions?
We went,
Alderman O'Brien?
Just one. Yes, it's not a major increase, but I'm looking at property services, item 54, and just looking at equipment rental. Can you just explain, I see it's only a $300 some odd jump. Is that from vendors that you have to? And what type of equipment do you actually rent? And is the cemetery shared?
excuse me, what line item was that?
Right, under, it's 54,821. And,
Yeah.
excuse me, I'm on page 204.
Thank you.
Let's see, 54,821. Okay, equipment rental. Okay, that's actually, okay, this is, so you're referring to Pinewood Cemetery?
Yes.
Okay, that's primarily what we do at the end of the year. Those funds are typically, they're not typically, they're transferred to Woodlawn for providing the services of maintaining Pinewood. We use our our backhoe, dump trucks, all our mowers. We trailer everything over. We don't leave anything in Pinewood. We trailer it back. So primarily, it's a rental fee for Pinewood to reimburse.
Okay. All right, and follow up?
Follow up, Alderman O'Brien?
On the mausoleum?
Correct.
And what's the, lack of a better term, the occupancy of it? How long would that particularly last, the city?
Len Fournier, superintendent. The mausoleum's, I'd say it has plenty of space. I'd say we're probably 30% full at capacity, if that. We have more niches and crypts available on the exterior. than we do presently on the interior. But it's a very nice building. It's, it has a lot of character. It's a very nice facility.
Thank you.
Okay, additional questions? Seeing none? Thank you very much.
All set with Pinewood as well? Woodlawn and Pinewood, thank you.
So you covered Edward and, Woodlawn and Pinewood, right?
Yeah.
So, the next, group is the public library. And do you have a presentation you want to give? I do, I have a PowerPoint. Okay, the mouse and the keyboard are up here if you want to grab them and do. And if you have the stick.
Just checking my pocket. I didn't leave it in my computer.
He brought it over.
Thank you all, Brian, that was a good trick. I'll bring it over here. So good evening, everybody. I'm Jen McCormick. I'm the library director. I've had the pleasure of directing your public library since January of 2010. And to my left is Mr. Barrett, the chair of our board.
Former chairman of the board.
You still have, this is Mr. Barrett's, hopefully his last official act as chair. He's retiring at the end of March after 47 years as a member of the board. And how many do you think? 35 of those as chair, maybe?
I don't know. I don't think it's been that long.
So Alderman Dowd asked all the divisions to give you a little overview of our operations before we talked about our budget. I recognize all of the faces here. I know a lot of you use the library, but that doesn't mean you know sort of the foundation of how we operate and where our funds come from. So this is a pretty quick PowerPoint presentation, but feel free to ask questions. And if you sat through the Citizens Academy last year, a lot of this is going to look familiar, just dressed up a little bit. Jen Hosking, some of you have met. She's my assistant director. Her name is up there when I'm not around or I'm busy. She's second in command and she keeps us running. This is how we are governed. The Board of Trustees, our 9-member board, they have authority over the budget, the building, they hire me, they approve all other hiring. I work under their direction. And then Jen Hosking works under me. That's the top level management. Oh, there we go. We have in total, off and on, 49 to 50 human beings that work at the library. I think our full-time equivalent count is around 42 at the moment. We do have 6 different departments that all have supervisors. Those people have, in general, masters in library science, not all of them. So we have a reference supervisor, children's and teen department each have a supervisor. The circulation department has a supervisor. Technical services does as well. We have 5 reference librarians. They are professional librarians as well. They have master's degrees, and they sit at the reference desk and provide customer service there. We always have 2 professional reference librarians on duty every hour that we're open. I should note that our assistant director also works as a reference librarian for part of her schedule. We have 3 assistant librarians. Our children, teen, and, our children's circulation and page department all have assistant librarians that do scheduling and run the department in the absence of their supervisor. We have 2 coordinators. That's a kind of a funny term for a library. Our IT director has a coordinator. That's the grade that they're in, and we have another coordinator involved in charge of graphic design. 15 library assistants. These are the people you are probably most familiar with. They work at our front desk. They work at our children's desk. They do the programming in the teen department. and they do a lot of the processing in the technical services department. We have a full-time maintenance person and I'm sorry, excuse me. We actually have 3 maintenance staff. So we have a full-time maintenance supervisor, and I wonder, he is not counted in the department supervisors, a full-time janitor and a part-time janitor. We have a full-time and a part-time security guard. We have 9 library pages. Those are part-time folks that put materials back on the shelves, set up for program, and do special projects. And we have 2 people in the admin office. There are currently 2 full-time people. One of those positions, we expect to reduce those hours this year. Just some little facts and figures about our general operations. We are open 7 days a week during most of the school year. That's about 69 hours a week. During the summer months, we're only open 65 hours a week. In about mid-May, we stop being open on Sundays because it's just not busy enough to justify it. I will note that hour by hour, minute by minute, Sundays are actually our busiest days. During the school year, we're only open 4 hours, but if you counted the number of people per hour, that's our busiest day. The next couple of blocks, those are fiscal year 17 figures in general. 408,000 items were checked out in that fiscal year. A little over 55,000 of those were digital items. Our digital collections, that circulation increases 3 or 4% every month, so you'll see that number to continue to go up. We had 286,000 people visit the library in fiscal year 2017. The number I know is already up 2% at this point in this fiscal year over last year. And we held ourselves 1,200 programs. I can tell you there's another neat fact. Some of you may know we opened the new Chandler Wing. The Chandler Wing has been used by community groups since it opened in June, 2,639 times. That's a pretty amazing figure. So where our funding comes from, our appropriated funds were $3.1 million in fiscal year 2017, a little over 1% of the city's budget. We have additional funding from trust funds. The board administers about 20 trust funds. A lot of them are restricted. They aren't all. We spent a little over $72,000 from those in fiscal year 2017, not including the $490,000 for the renovation project. In 2017, we spent $77,000 in fines. We generally bring in, it's declining. In that year, we probably brought in about $56,000 in fine money. Most of that expenditure was for renovations to the children's room. We repointed the bricks, replaced the carpet, painted the walls, and built a new service desk. This year, revenue's down. We'll probably be under $50,000 for the year, and we've only spent about $17,000 for it. I'm hoarding it for another special project we have coming up. You won't see that in your budget book. Our fines money is not subject to appropriation, so you could see it in Lawson, but it's not part of the budget book. And our friends contributed $16,000 last year. Their budget year is calendar year, not fiscal year. Our requests are just about the same for the 2018 calendar year. So that's all pretty traditional things that you're used to the library doing. Another major role that we play in the city that I don't think we talk about enough is connecting Nashua citizens to each other, to city services, to their city government, and to cultural and educational opportunities. So the next 3 slides are just a sampling of the groups that we have significant partnerships with. And I can tell you, I don't know why the Department of Homeland Security is up there. That should be USCIS. We have USCIS in for open houses and immigration workshops. Greater Nashua Continuum of Care, they meet in our building, and we're hosting Employment Connect this year in May. AARP comes and they do tax help February, March, and April. We are the Nashua Public Library is the biggest tax help site in the state. Last year they did about 1,400 tax returns. Public Health does immunization clinics, and they also are working with Riviere nursing students and hosting health education sessions on Wednesday mornings. Our education partners, the Nashua School District, we're actually really expanding our partnership with them for our summer reading program this year, trying to help them tackle the disappointing scores as far as literacy goes. We're hoping to be part of their efforts to get everybody reading at grade level by grade 3. Vetflix is hosting some educational sessions on veterans issues. Job Corps comes every week. They have open houses. Education's a little bit of a stretch, but they offer employment training for people ages 16 to 24, and they come and do recruiting and enroll people on Thursdays. In the League of Women Voters hosted the candidate series here in the year of the presidential election, and we're hoping with the big 2018 elections, we can do that a little more. And these are some of our cultural partners. Interestingly, I'll flip through this quickly. Nashua River Watershed Association, that's a new partnership. They used our activity room to host a camp during a vacation camp during February. We had 17 or 18 kids learning to be junior naturalists. They did classes in the activity room, and then every day they were outside on the river doing activities with their teachers. Symphony New Hampshire does regular lectures. City Arts Nashua, we not only do they use our facility, but we hosted a couple of their public art projects last year when they did the dining room table project. And One Greater Nashua, we are also great partners with them. The Navigators meet in our space. I'm actually on the leadership team for One Greater Nashua. We have a number of welcoming city projects going on. So that's a really fast introduction to what we do. I'm happy to answer questions if you have any before we talk about the budget.
Okay, before we go any further, the appropriations are on page 213 of your budget book and revenues on page 51. So in your meeting with the mayor, is your budget increased, level, or?
So if you'll note, I submitted a memo, which hopefully you read. We ended up, I think, a 1.2% increase over last year. And I apologize. So the figures, if you read my memo, the figures that I refer to look very different than what's in the budget book. When I wrote this memo and talked to the Board of Trustees, we talk about our budget without employee benefits included. So that, because that's not something the department has any influence or control over. Our budget is, I would call it a level service budget. We're not cutting hours. We have all the same staff. We were able to include, generally we include about a 3% increase for all of our software and materials that we purchase, just for general increase in costs. And we incorporated the anticipated utility increases as well.
Yeah, I asked the question because we're on TV and the people at home don't have your memo.
Right.
That was for
Yep.
this group.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions? Alderman Tenza.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It makes me feel better about all the fines I pay for myself and my family.
Thank you,
down at the
Alderman
library.
Tenza.
My question concerns the building, because I would guess it's built in the 1970s at some point.
It opened in 1971, yes.
Okay. Are there improvements that can be made to the efficiency of the building as far as heating and air conditioning, which may be helpful to your budget?
We do have capital projects before the Capital Improvements Committee. You'll see it in your book. Our whole HVAC system needs renovation, including digital controls. And we also have requested funding for repointing the bricks. We did repoint the bricks in the children's room, but the rest of the building needs to be repointed. Those would be the major improvements for efficiency as far as heating costs. Anybody who's used our building knows that our bathrooms were also built in 1971. So besides the new one that was built for the Chandler wing, we could use some major renovations, replacement of fixtures, and improvement of tiles. We've been able to improve and replace lighting kind of piecemeal. So probably, I don't know, 40% of the fixtures in the building are already LED fixtures. And we continue to make those improvements and use better efficient bulbs, excuse me. Does that answer your question?
It does. And just to follow up, I mean, is there any more that can be done as far as insulation, things like that in the building? That
No,
of, or-
we're concrete block and brick.
Okay.
So
So it is what it is.
it is what it is,
All
yeah.
right. Thank you.
Yeah, also the capital projects are in a separate book that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, and those projects go through the capital improvements committee. They have a recommendation of the mayor, and then the mayor takes a cut at it, and what you see in that book is what the mayor has sent forward to us. Alderman Kelly, then Alderman O'Brien.
I have two questions. One's fun and one's a little more straightforward. I also pay my fair share of fines. Having a daughter, you find them under the bed when they actually do. I saw that you said that it's dropped by about $20,000.
Yes.
Is that a continuing trend, and how will that affect, your budget and how you fund some of those projects that you rely on?
That is a really good question that we are struggling with the board, is how to make that up. The board does have the luxury of some trust funds to replace those, but I expect what it will mean is our requests to this group will just continue to increase to make up for that. I would say the leading cause of that reduction is the fact that people do not borrow DVDs and CDs from us at anywhere near the rate that they used to. A DVD goes out for a week, and then we start charging you after that. Circulation of media items like that has probably decreased since I've been here, 50 or 60%. And we expect that to continue to drop. I'm not sure that we'll even have CDs to borrow. It's too easy to stream.
So my fun question is, I recently came across the ukulele program.
Yes.
And that is so exciting, and I would like to take one out, but I know that they're actually very popular. Do you have plans to expand that, and is that part of your budget?
That is not part of our budget, and we did not plan to expand that, but I will take that under consideration. It's a small thing. Actually, one of our ukuleles went home with someone and didn't come back, so we kind of got backed up. So I think we're back to 2 full ukulele kits, but I'll talk to the right person about adding a third.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Alderman O'Brien?
Yes, I'd just like to take a step back to your facility and looking at your courtyard in the front. Could you tell us where library property actually is and then Court Street property begins? And because there is like a public plaza there, and then looking at it with you the other day, and it's a great spot. I imagine it gets very useful during the summertime, and but it seems to be in some disrepair right now.
Mr. Barrett might actually be able to answer that better. It's my understanding that the library property is, it's very difficult for me to, I think our property is all kind of at the lowest elevation. And then that middle plaza and the upper plaza outside the Court Street Theater actually belong to the Court Street Theater, but I think in the end, it's really all city property. We maintain those plazas. We actually did some renovations 5 years ago or 4 years ago, totally just to eliminate the skateboard ramp that had formed from the front door of the Court Street Theater down. The grassy area directly across from our entrance we use for performances. We have 8 concerts a year, and we use it for kids' activities.
Okay.
That upper plaza that we renovated with the new plantings where there used to be grass, it's people sit and read or talk, but it's fairly underutilized, and I would agree it's in disrepair. It could use some TLC.
I don't have anything to expand upon. Skip Barrett, who was a one-time chairman of the library trustees. I think it's been assumed that the library has, that is part of the library, that middle ground. And the reason I say that, if you look at the works of art, in quotation marks, that are there, there's one by Obi Spumoni that is, I think, made out of aluminum or something like that. And there's the Jaffa Shoger kiosk that's there. And then more recently, they put in the sculpture that was done by a woman from Vietnam as part of the Andres Art Institute Sculptures in Nashua program. And those things were placed on that ground. And nobody came to us for permission to do so. Well, I think they did, actually.
Before my time.
No, I think they did. Now, I know that those, the Schrodinger thing and the Obi Spumoni sculpture were funded by Burbank Funds, which is a library trust. And so that's why I'm saying that it probably would be under the purview of the library. And as far as the comment that was made about the maintenance of that, and being somewhat in disrepair, I would agree with that. It gets a lot of hard use. I think that's maintained. I don't know whether our maintenance staff mows that or whether the
No,
Parks and Rec was doing
no,
it.
Parks and Rec doesn't maintain any of the library property. That's all Larry, our one guy and his push mower.
So anyway, that's my guess on who owns what, but it's all owned by the city.
Okay, thank you. You all set, Alderman
I'm all
Ryan?
set, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Oh, Alderman
I just
Wiltshire.
make a comment before the library leaves. I'd like to thank Skip for his 47 years on the board. Incredible, Skip. You've been terrific. Thank you so much.
It's been fun.
was
Some of the
sorry.
time.
I was sorry I missed that event for you at the library. I was occupied somewhere else, but congratulations on all you've done.
Thank you, Rick.
For the library.
Thank you.
It wouldn't be where it is today without you.
How many of the books have you read?
Yeah. Well, I got my start on this board, so.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate you coming in.
Early night. Last one.
I'll now entertain a motion to put R 18019 on the table till the next budget meeting.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to put R 18019 on the table until the next meeting of the Budget Committee.
Okay, you've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next order of business.
For unfinished business, we have none.
And we addressed R 18014, new business ordinances.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have a bill that was tabled in committee. I would like to make a motion to take from the table 018006.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to take R 018006 from the table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 018006, expanding the tax increment financing development district under RSA 162-K and NRO 295-11, established by O-3-171, and replacing the tax increment financing development program and financing plan adopted by R-03-197 and R-04-58. This was assigned to PEDC with a favorable recommendation issued on 3/6/18. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of 018006. Any discussion? Alderman Tenza?
If I may, I know that a number of us were at the meeting back, the PEDC meeting back on March 6th on this piece of legislation, and it was favorable. You know, one of the things that struck me about the proposed ordinance is that we're really not making any decisions about the money. There's really no guarantee that there will be any money. This is just allowing the city to put this tax increment financing district in place. All the decisions about how any money will be spent the money will have to be spent along the area where the financing district is, but no decisions have been made about what improvements or how the money will be spent. That'll have to be a separate discussion at a later date. And so I believe that's why, one of the reasons why the Planning Economic Development Committee approved approved the ordinance, and I hope that this committee will do the same here tonight.
Yes, any funding coming back to be spent in that district would come back to the board for approval.
Yes.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. General discussion. Seeing none. There's no public for public comment. Any remarks by the alderman? Nobody wants to mention anything about a rail?
We'll do that, Yvonne. We'll do that later.
Okay. Possible non-public, we don't need a non-public. Do I hear a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Alderman Wiltshire makes a motion to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we're adjourned at 8:21.